Hey everybody, welcome to the first installment of The Government is Bad for You. Since this is the first video that I plan on putting on YouTube, I think it's a good time just to kind of let you guys know what I plan on doing with this channel, the Facebook page, and eventually the website. My real goal is to try to influence others to get them to see what the hell is actually going on, and to get them to set themselves on the path of knowledge. I read a good article a couple days back. It was I believe it was by Jeff Berwick himself. It was on the Dollar Vigilante, and that's a site I read every day. And what it talked about was the difference between education and knowledge. Very briefly, because this isn't really the topic of the first one, is that too many people in our country seek education when they really should be seeking knowledge. And kind of how my journey started was about 4 years ago. I realized that with the bank bailouts, this TARP mess, and what happened with GM, is that none of these solutions were going to work. And that's eventually when I set myself on the course of learning myself, seeking out the answers, trying to figure out what was happening and why. And throughout the course of the last couple of years, since I do run my own business and I have time to read and to educate myself, I shouldn't even say educate, to seek knowledge and to gain additional knowledge, I found a lot of information. Okay, it's all out there. And especially the other thing I enjoy is my Kindle. I have a Kindle. I spent $200 on it. You can go to Amazon and get ebooks for dirt cheap. So for it being 2012 and people being sort of oblivious to what's going on at this point, it's really their own fault. Okay, you can get almost anything you want on Kindle in seconds and start reading and start educating yourself about what the hell is actually happening. Nonetheless, the purpose of this is to influence others. Now, of course, I'm not naive to think that I'm really going to be able to influence thousands and thousands of people or that type of thing, but really what I want to do is to help somebody, because I found out, especially with myself, since I really started getting into this about 4 years back, is that one person can influence a handful of people, and those handful of people can influence a handful of people themselves. And eventually what you have is a community of people that you know and associate with that eventually begin to see things the way you do. And I believe when that happens, that's when progress or change can be made. I hate even using those words, because those words are sort of hijacked by the left, to kind of push their agenda. But anyhow, that's the goal I have, is to influence others, to kind of grow this thing. And you know what? You got to start somewhere. So here's episode 1. Now, I don't know about you, but every now and then there's things that just kind of piss you off about who knows what. Whether it's a saying, a phrase, a word, things you see on TV, things you may read, that type of stuff. For me, and this has happened, I don't know when I really noticed it, but I was cognizant of it maybe about a month or two ago. And I don't know what you guys think, but what really irritates me honestly lately is the word patriot. Okay, now, if I would ask you to take a look at, or I shouldn't even say that, if I'd ask you to put an image of your head of what a patriot is. Okay, if I would do that myself, my first image, would be something along the lines of George Washington and the Continentals, or the founders of our country, basically laying down the solutions they had to try to stop tyranny by the king in that case. Okay, that's when I think of patriot, that's what I think of. That's the first image in my head or whatever my mind conjures up. What I have is you hear the word patriot thrown around all over the place lately. And usually where I see it is it's on conservative websites, conservative Facebook groups, or libertarian Facebook groups or websites, or whatever. Because if you look up the definition of a patriot, now I had it in front of me, I don't know where it went now, but in general, what they say patriot is technically, alright, here it is. A patriot is a person who loves, supports, and defends his or her country and its interests with devotion. The second one is a person who regards himself or herself as a defender, especially of individual rights, against presumed interference by the federal government. Okay, now I assume that usually, I shouldn't say usually, but anyone who's going to listen to this would likely put themselves in the second category, at least if you got to this far in episode 1. Alright, so I guess if you want to be real technical, we can consider ourselves patriots if we rail against government. But here's the issue I have. Patriots, to me, are people who stand up and do something. Okay, there has to be an action involved. For me, patriot is almost like a verb. It's something that you do. Alright, so to be considered a patriot, you have to go out there and do something. You have to produce. You have to influence. You have to correspond with others to try to get them, I shouldn't even say try, but to maybe just speak with them to see if you can influence what they're thinking. It doesn't mean to me that you kind of sit in front of Facebook all day long and kind of read some different articles and just complain, to yourself or your dog or your cat or whoever. So it really grates on me for a lot of these places to call, to use the word patriot in the title. Okay, about if you just go into Facebook and you go in that little search bar and you put in patriot, take a look at all the different groups there are. There's probably hundreds and hundreds of groups that use patriot in their name. Okay. Now, one of them I do enjoy is the Patriots Lament. It's a radio show from some guys in Alaska. Take a look at them on the internet if you like. Good people. But the issue I have is just, it's one of those things where people just kind of throw it out there and use the term to try to conjure up like, hey, this is who we are. We're patriots. All right. And I don't see how people can do that without there being action, okay? I don't think there's any sort of thing as kitchen table patriots if you just kind of read the newspaper or, type away on your computer and yammer back at it about how bad things are and don't actually do anything. You're not a patriot then. You're just some person who sits there and complains, okay? Complainers don't do anything. There is no action. So once there's action, then call yourself a patriot. Okay, but until then, leave the word patriot alone until you're willing to put your neck out there and do something about it. Okay, patriots are people who act. They're not people who just sit in front of the computer and complain. So, for me, that's the end of episode 1 of The Government is Bad for You.